Javier woke up before dawn in his tiny room above the old bakery where he lived with his grandmother. He patched his favorite but worn coat with a scrap of red cloth and tied the faded strings tight around his waist. His grandmother pressed a small piece of bread into his hand and waved him off with hopeful eyes. As he stepped into the cool morning air, the street lamps flickered and cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. He walked briskly to avoid the chill and to make sure he reached school before the first bell rang. The worn path led him by the boarded playground where the laughter of other children drifted through broken fences. He paused to peek at a swing that creaked in the wind, but no one ever stopped to play there anymore. A stray dog trotted by and sniffed his pockets but moved on when it found nothing to eat. Javier arrived at the schoolyard just as the doors swung open and the noisy crowd spilled onto the steps. He felt a sudden hush as every eye turned toward the boy in patched clothes and mismatched shoes. A group of classmates pointed and giggled at the holes in his socks and the frayed edges of his jeans. Some whispered jokes about his empty lunchbox and the cheap metal lunch pail he carried in his hand. He lowered his gaze and pretended not to hear their cruel words echoing through the cold morning air. Javier slipped into the narrow hallway and found his locker behind a row of shiny new ones. His classmates rushed past him talking about weekend plans and new video games he could never afford. In the crowded classroom, he sat in the back row, where no one usually noticed him at all. Miss Thompson, his gentle teacher, smiled and greeted him by name before starting the lesson for the day. She handed him a clean sheet of paper and asked him to solve the math problem on the board. Javier focused on the numbers and worked through each step quietly with a pencil his grandmother had sharpened for him. He finished quickly and turned the paper over to hide his small victory from all the eyes watching him. When the teacher collected the sheets, she paused at his desk and showed his perfect score to the class. A few students gasped in surprise, and some exchanged guilty looks when they realized he had solved every problem. Miss Thompson praised his work and said she knew he had a bright mind hidden beneath his humble clothes. That moment warmed Javier's heart more than any coat or jacket could have kept him warm. Over the next hour, he lost himself in lessons about history and science and stories of heroes long ago. He listened with wide eyes as Miss Thompson described brave explorers and famous inventors who changed the world. He dreamed of a day when he could use his own ideas to help people and make life better for his grandmother. At recess, the same students who had mocked him circled him and shoved a small stick into his backpack. They laughed as he picked it up and brushed off the dust, but he said nothing to defend himself. His heart pounded with anger, but he held it down and reminded himself that success would be the best answer. On his way home, he stopped by the small bookstore that let him browse the old shelves for free. He flipped through worn pages and discovered tales of merchants who built great shops from nothing but hard work. Javier imagined a future where he owned a large store filled with books and games and tools for learning. The owner smiled and showed him a dusty collection of old journals that he could read after school. That afternoon, he studied the journals by candlelight in his quiet room and wrote notes in the margins. He practiced adding numbers and reading new words until his eyes felt heavy and his pencil slipped from his hand. His grandmother woke him gently and tucked him into bed with her soft shawl wrapped around his shoulders. As he drifted to sleep, Javier promised himself that he would change his fate and never be mocked again. He believed that with each small idea and every lesson learned, he was one step closer to his dream. And with that hopeful thought, Javier closed his eyes and let the night carry him toward a brighter tomorrow. Javier woke early again and dressed in his neat patched coat before leaving the small room he shared with his grandmother. He stepped into the silent street and breathed in the cool morning air fresh with the smell of baking bread from the bakery below. He hurried to the bookstore where Mrs. Patel was waiting with a stack of new arrival books for him to sort and label. Javier carefully arranged each title on the shelf and even created a special display for his favorite adventure stories to inspire young readers. When the shop grew quiet, he counted his coins and smiled at how his savings had increased since last week. He tucked the coins into his pocket and walked to the library for an after-school study session on business and writing. The librarian showed him how to find books about markets and let him borrow one to take home. At home, his grandmother prepared a simple meal of rice and vegetables while Javier read aloud by candlelight. He made notes in the margins and marked pages that explained how to start a small enterprise with little money. The next day, he shared his idea for a handmade bookmark stand with classmates and asked for their help with bright patterns. They spent the afternoon cutting paper, gluing ribbons, and drawing stars and hearts on each bookmark. On the day of their first sale, they set up a table by the school gate and held a sign that said, "Handmade bookmarks, 2 for 1 coin." Students and teachers stopped to browse the colorful selection, and soon the stand buzzed with curious buyers. Javier felt his chest swell with pride as he handed a bookmark to a shy girl who offered 2 coins with a grateful smile. He watched his grandmother's careful hands count the coins and keep the supplies neatly stacked. After the sale, they sat together on a bench and divided the money, putting some into Javier's tin jar and some toward household needs. That evening, Javier returned to the library to research savings accounts and how money could grow safely over time. The librarian explained interest and showed him how small deposits could multiply if he kept adding regularly. Javier opened his first savings book and wrote his name in neat letters on the front, feeling grown up and responsible. At school, he practiced solving more challenging math problems and saw how numbers would be key for his future plans. His teacher noticed his new confidence and invited him to present his solution on the board for the whole class. Javier took a deep breath, stepped forward, and explained each step clearly until the class applauded his work. Even the students who once mocked his old clothes watched him quietly and did not whisper as he passed by. He did not let this change him and kept focusing on his business plan and on growing his savings. On weekends, he sold bookmarks at the local market alongside other craft stands. He learned to speak with customers politely and to package his bookmarks in small paper bags tied with a ribbon. Slowly, his profits grew enough for him to buy a second display case and to hire his sister as a helper. He paid her a small wage from his earnings, which made her beam with excitement. Each coin he added to his bank book felt like a step closer to the day he could open a real shop. Javier also spent evenings reading about budgets and even sketched a simple plan on lined paper. The classmates who teased him now looked surprised when they saw him counting money and talking business with adults. Javier ignored their stares and held his head high as he moved from task to task without hesitation. At night, he tucked his grandmother into bed and told her about kind customers and new ideas. His grandmother patted his hand and said she was proud of the man he was becoming. Javier felt a warm glow inside as he realized how far he had come with small steps and steady work. He wrote in a journal each night, listing goals and lessons learned that day. He dreamed of a bright future where his own store would welcome friends, family, and new customers. He knew that every page he filled and every coin he saved was a brick in the road ahead. And as he closed his journal, Javier looked at his grandmother and promised to build a better life for them both. With that promise in his heart, he drifted to sleep, excited for the next morning when he would continue his journey toward success. Before sunrise, Javier tiptoed past his grandmother's door and carried his savings book toward the community center. The weekend market stood quiet in the early light, and Javier carefully chose a spot near the main gate. Market manager Mr. Ahmed arrived and recognized the boy who sold bookmarks by the school gate. Javier showed his savings book and asked if he could rent a small stall to display his crafts. Mr. Ahmed smiled kindly and offered him a simple wooden table for a low weekly fee. Javier counted his coins and handed over the payment with steady hands. He arranged his colorful bookmarks on one side and a new set of handmade greeting cards on the other. The cards featured bright drawings of flowers, stars, and smiling faces on thick paper. Each card bore a positive message, written in clear letters to inspire whoever read it. When the market opened, Javier greeted each visitor with a warm good morning and a polite bow. Customers admired the neat rows of bookmarks and the cheerful cards tied in bundles. A mother buying a card for her daughter praised Javier's careful artwork. An elderly man asked Javier how he learned to draw such even letters. Javier replied that he practiced every night by candlelight, marking mistakes in his journal. The man nodded in respect and bought 5 cards to send to family members. Javier felt his chest fill with pride at the thought of his cards traveling far. By midday, he had sold half of his stock and counted his earnings on the tablecloth. He set aside some coins for his savings book and some for supplies to make more cards. Javier used a small notebook to track his sales and plan new designs for next week. His parents' friends who ran other stalls offered encouraging words and tips on drawing new patterns. Javier took notes and sketched ideas for animal shapes and seasonal themes. After the market closed, he carried his unsold craft home in a neat cloth bag. At home, his grandmother listened as he described the day's successes with bright eyes. They shared a modest dinner and counted the coins together under the soft lamplight. Javier tucked more coins into his savings book and sealed it with a satisfied smile. That night, he stayed up late sketching new card designs inspired by the stories he read. He practiced writing neatly until each letter looked even on the page. Before sleep, he planned to ask Mrs. Patel for thicker paper sheets next week. In school, the next Monday, classmates whispered and watched him carry his larger sketchbook. Javier ignored their questions and focused on solving his math homework with ease. Miss Thompson noticed his bright sketch peeking from his bag and asked him to share it with class. He displayed his drawings and explained how each design represented hope and friendship. The class applauded, and the teasing voices fell silent for the rest of the day. Javier felt lighter knowing his work had earned genuine praise. After school, he went to the bookstore and discussed his business plan with Mrs. Patel. She offered him discounted paper supplies and told him his hard work reminded her of her own youth. Javier thanked her warmly and promised to make the most of her generosity. At home, he folded the new sheets and stored them in a neat stack for future cards. He closed his journal after writing a new goal to open his own shop someday. As he drifted to sleep, Javier dreamed of a small store full of bright crafts and happy customers. Javier woke before sunrise and carried his sturdy wooden table to the busy weekend market entrance where vendors were setting up stalls beneath colorful tents that fluttered in the gentle morning breeze. He unrolled a bright cloth over the table and arranged his neatly stacked bookmarks, each decorated with shimmering ribbons and cheerful patterns, ready to catch the eye of every passerby. A soft wind lifted his handmade greeting cards, each featuring warm messages and simple drawings, as he carefully placed them beside the bookmarks to form an inviting display. When the market opened, Javier greeted each arriving customer with a calm smile and a clear good morning, even though his heart pounded with hope and a bit of nervous excitement. Sunlight filtered through the tent's fabric and cast playful shapes on his crafts, making the colors look extra bright against the cloth and drawing curious glances from shoppers. A group of children wandered by, eyes wide with wonder, and one little girl pointed eagerly at a card showing a dancing sun with a big, friendly grin. Javier knelt to her level and handed her the card, explaining softly that the sun's smile was meant to remind everyone to stay happy even on cloudy days. She hugged the card close and ran back to her mother, beaming, as her small hand gripped the art like a precious treasure. Throughout the morning, Javier chatted with visitors, learning which designs capture their hearts and making mental notes for new ideas he could sketch later. An elderly couple paused by his stall to celebrate their golden wedding anniversary and chose 4 flower cards to send warm wishes to family members far away. Javier carefully placed each card into a simple paper envelope, tying them gently with a thin ribbon and sealing them with a tiny hand-drawn heart. When he counted his coins at midday, he smiled at how his sales had doubled compared to last week, proof that his effort and kindness were paying off. He added a few coins to his savings book, set aside others for new art supplies, and kept some for a small treat to share with his grandmother after the market closed. As afternoon shadows stretched across the stalls, Javier pulled out his sketchbook and began drawing new designs for upcoming holidays and celebrations. His pencil moved quickly across the page as he sketched winter scenes, birthday cakes, and friendship quotes that he planned to refine back home. A sudden rain shower sent vendors scrambling, but Javier remained calm and covered his display with a clear plastic sheet he had carefully packed for just such moments. Drops of rain tapped softly on the cover, but his craft stayed dry and looked even more inviting beneath the dim, steady light of the gray sky. A customer ducked under Javier's canopy to escape the rain and admired his neatly organized bookmarks before choosing 3 with colorful tassels. Javier wrapped her selection in a small paper bag tied with a ribbon and reminded her that bookmarks made thoughtful gifts for readers of all ages. She smiled gratefully and told him that reading was her favorite hobby, saying his bookmarks would bring joy each time she opened her books. As the rain slowed, a vivid rainbow appeared beyond the tents, and Javier felt inspired to add arc-shaped designs to his next batch of greeting cards. He sketched a quick rainbow on a scrap of paper and snapped a photo with his old phone to remember the bright colors and promise it held. Before packing up, Javier counted his supplies and realized he had enough materials to double his next shipment of cards without running out. The market manager stopped by to congratulate him on his success and suggested he speak with a local cafe owner who sought unique gifts for customers. Javier quickly noted the cafe's address and, after packing his unsold crafts, walked down the street hoping to secure a new place to sell his work. The cafe owner welcomed him warmly, agreed to display his bookmarks by the counter, and promised to share a fair commission on each sale. Javier thanked her politely and pictured his crafts brightening the cafe's warm atmosphere, surrounded by the scent of fresh coffee and pastries. He returned home with a light step, carrying both his unsold cards and a hopeful plan for the new cafe partnership. His grandmother met him at the door with a bowl of steaming soup and listened with shining eyes as he described the cafe opportunity. She squeezed his hand gently, telling him she was proud of his hard work and excited for the days ahead. After dinner, Javier sat at his small desk and refined the rainbow-inspired card sketches, carefully choosing paper thickness and ribbon colors. He measured each ribbon, practiced neat lettering for the word hope, and cut the paper so each card looked crisp and inviting. Finished cards went into protective sleeves, and he labeled them for the cafe display with a small hand-lettered sign showing the price. He then opened his savings book and entered that day's earnings, along with a note about the new cafe collaboration and his goals for next week. Javier closed the book slowly, promising himself to keep every coin and every idea safe until he could open a small shop of his own. As he cleaned his brushes and pencils, he remembered how far he had come since selling a single bookmark for 1 coin at school. He thought of the classmates who had mocked him long ago and realized that his steady work had changed both their minds and his destiny. Packing his tools into a neat box, he prepared for another day of crafting dreams into reality and helping others feel joy through his art. He kissed his grandmother's forehead, thanked her for her unwavering support, and promised to keep working hard for both of them. Lying in the peaceful darkness of his small room, Javier imagined the bright lights of his own store window and drifted off to sleep full of optimistic dreams. Javier woke at dawn to pack his fresh stock of handcrafted bookmarks and hand-painted greeting cards into a sturdy cloth bag before stepping into the quiet morning air filled with birdsong. He walked to the cozy cafe where his creations were displayed on a small wooden shelf beside the counter and exchanged a warm greeting with the owner before counting the week's earnings. The cafe owner smiled as she handed him a small envelope of coins and praised his bright ribbon tassels and uplifting messages that had drawn many customers. Javier carefully recorded each coin in his savings book and tucked it safely into his pocket before turning his thoughts to new designs for upcoming holidays. He sketched cheerful winter motifs and spring flowers in his journal while sipping a cup of warm tea, imagining how each new idea might bring joy to another reader. After leaving the cafe, he stopped by the school office to ask about setting up at the upcoming fundraiser and learned he could join the bake sale next Saturday. The secretary smiled when she saw his neatly kept journal and reserved a prime spot for his stall beside the main entrance where foot traffic would be highest. Javier felt a flutter of excitement at the thought of selling to parents and teachers who had never seen his crafts before and hurried home to prepare more stock. That afternoon, he and his grandmother worked together to cut colorful paper, tie ribbons, and write friendly messages on each card until their hands ached. They sorted the finished pieces into neat bundles and packed them into a basket for easy carrying, talking softly about the possibilities that lay ahead. At dusk, Javier reviewed an article in the local newspaper about youth business grants and jotted down the editor's contact information for future reference. He discussed the idea with his grandmother over a simple supper of rice and vegetables, and she encouraged him to attend the grant workshop next week. The following morning, he left for school early to fill out the fundraiser form and to confirm his spot, earning a nod of approval from the principal. That day in class, Javier focused on every lesson, solving math problems and writing clear paragraphs, quietly proving that his patched clothes hid a keen mind. At the end of the school day, he set up his stall beside the bake sale tents and arranged his crafts in neat rows, the bright colors shining in the afternoon sun. Parents and teachers paused to admire his work, and several bought bookmarks as gifts, leaving Javier's heart racing with pride and relief. He counted the day's sales and set aside coins for savings, for workshop fees, and for reinvesting in new art supplies to keep his stock fresh. As the fundraiser ended, the principal thanked Javier for his participation and encouraged him to apply for the youth grant, offering a recommendation letter. That evening, Javier and his grandmother attended the first grant workshop, where he learned about budgets, loan options, and marketing plans. The workshop leader praised Javier's detailed notes and passion, saying he had one of the clearest visions for growth among all the students. At home, Javier updated his journal with budget worksheets and sketched a timeline for his grant application steps and interview preparation. He also wrote a polite thank you note to the principal for the recommendation and slipped it into her mailbox at school the next morning. Later that week, the local paper ran a short story about Javier's fundraiser success and published his photo beside the cafe display. Javier's classmates who once teased him fell silent when they saw his name in print, and some offered shy congratulations as he passed by. He nodded politely but stayed focused on his work, reminding himself that humility and kindness would serve him better than pride. On Saturday, he returned to the cafe to collect new coins and was invited to display his crafts for an extra week, thanks to popular demand. Javier accepted gratefully and cleaned his display shelf before adding handcrafted holiday cards decorated with glitter and foil accents. He also prepared a small sample pack of bookmarks tied with a ribbon for visitors to try and share with friends, hoping word would spread. That night, he practiced his grant pitch in front of his grandmother, explaining clearly how he would use funds to rent a small storefront. She listened with shining eyes and offered gentle suggestions, reminding him to mention his plan to hire local helpers and donate crafts to charity events. On Monday, he delivered his grant application to the newspaper office and the school, attaching his sketches, budget plan, and heartfelt cover letter. When the editor called to confirm receipt, Javier felt a surge of hope and thanked her for the chance to grow his dream into reality. Back at school, his classmates watched quietly as he walked past, carrying his large portfolio with the confidence of someone who had a purpose. Javier ignored any lingering stares and focused on every lesson, imagining how the skills he learned would guide him in running his own shop. After the final bell, he and his grandmother visited the cafe one last time before the holiday rush, collecting coins and honest feedback from customers. A friendly barista told Javier that his cards had sold out quickly and asked if he could create a special Valentine's Day collection next month. He smiled at the thought and added a note to his journal to sketch heart-shaped cards and love-themed bookmarks in the coming days. That night, Javier tucked his grandmother into bed and shared his excitement over the cafe request, promising to keep working hard no matter what. He closed his journal after writing a new goal to open a small shop by next year and to display his crafts in 5 local businesses. And as he drifted to sleep, Javier imagined turning the key of his own store's door, welcoming visitors into a bright world of art and hope. One morning, Javier found a letter on the door addressed in neat print to J. Morales, youth grant winner. He felt his heart beat fast as he opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a bright certificate saying he had won a grant to start his own craft shop. He ran to his grandmother's room and shook her gently awake. When she saw the certificate, her eyes filled with tears of joy. They hugged in the dim morning light, both of them smiling broadly. Javier spent the rest of the week visiting small shops to find a good location. He carried his journal with budget plans and explored dusty corners of the town. One shop stood empty on a quiet street with a big window and a solid wooden door. The owner agreed to rent it at a low price in exchange for a share of the first year's profits. Javier counted his grant money and nodded with determination. He cleaned the dusty floors with help from his grandmother and a friendly neighbor. Together, they painted the walls a bright shade of yellow to match his crafts. Javier hung his first handmade sign above the door with bold letters that read Javier's Crafts. He unpacked his boxes of bookmarks and cards and arranged them on wooden shelves. Each shelf had a small tag with a smiling sun logo he designed himself. He set up a table by the window to display his newest rainbow cards. On opening day, he printed simple flyers and handed them out at school. His classmates read the flyers and whispered excitedly as they passed through the halls. Javier arrived early that morning with a cardboard cutout of a giant bookmark. He placed a welcome mat at the door and put flowers by the entrance. At 10 o'clock, he unlocked the door and stepped back to greet his first customers. A few neighbors trickled in and admired his neat display and polite manners. The bakery owner next door brought warm bread to celebrate and left it on the counter. Local children pressed their faces to the window, eyes wide with curiosity. Javier greeted each visitor with a small gift of a flower-shaped card. The mayor of the town came by and praised Javier for his hard work and vision. He cut a bright ribbon across the door and declared the shop officially open. Javier felt proud as he thanked everyone for their support and kind words. That afternoon, the shop was busy with curious shoppers buying bookmarks and cards. He rang a small bell above the door each time someone entered, and its clear chime made him smile. His grandmother sat in the corner with a warm shawl, handing out tea to visitors. Javier helped a shy girl pick her first set of cards and taught her how to tie the ribbons. He even gave a free sample to a teacher who promised to recommend his shop to others. By the end of the day, he counted more coins than ever before, filling his savings book once again. He added a note under that day's entry, "First day in my own shop." That night he locked the door, turned off the lights, and walked home with his grandmother. As he lay in bed, he could still hear the bells chime in his dreams. He knew this was only the beginning of his journey and that many more ideas awaited. And with a smile on his face, Javier drifted into sleep, excited for tomorrow's bright possibilities. Javier watched his little craft shop transform from a dusty room above the bakery into a bright yellow storefront with a wide window, where people queued each morning to see his handmade art, colorful bookmarks, and greeting cards that glowed like small windows of joy. Each morning he unlocked the door, dusted the shelves lined with neat rows of art sets and handcrafted journals, and arranged his latest designs so each product caught curious eyes that sparkled with interest. As word spread through the town, families from nearby villages boarded early buses to visit his shop, drawn by stories of a boy who turned scraps of paper into works of joy and hope that warmed many hearts. Javier counted his earnings each day, deposited coins into his savings book, then bought supplies of paper, paint, ribbon, and ink to offer new products like pencil cases, sketch pads, and stickers that added color to many school days. He launched a simple online page sharing photos of his crafts, explaining how each could bring smiles, and soon orders arrived from people who lived far away but felt close through his words. He opened his email and read messages of thanks from customers whose children used his bookmarks for bedtime stories, or whose friends sent his cards on special days reminding him of moments shared with friends. His savings book became a record of numbers that climbed until it held figures he once thought impossible, and he felt that each coin brought him closer to changing his life, and he imagined new paths ahead. After a year of steady work, he met with a banker in a small office where he learned how to open an account designed for young entrepreneurs like him, and he left the office filled with confidence. The banker explained interest rates, safe loans, and smart budgeting, reminding Javier that money, handled wisely, could grow like seeds in warm soil, and he wrote careful notes filling pages with hope for the future. With part of his savings, he rented a second storefront on the main street, painted it in pastel colors, and hired his sister and a childhood friend to help manage the new location where colorful banners waved in the breeze. This second shop sold school supplies alongside his art pieces, bundling pencils and notebooks with matching bookmarks and cards so students could carry his work to class and to remember his story. He reached out to two former classmates who had teased him, offering them steady work and fair pay, and they accepted with shy smiles that turned into genuine laughter and thanked him quietly for the second chance. Javier treated them kindly, teaching neat handwriting, painting techniques, and customer service so they felt valued and proud of their contributions, and he celebrated their growth. Together they decorated the new shop interior with bright murals of suns, rainbows, and books, and arranged supplies on shelves so each shelf told a story of hope and each brushstroke told a story. His grandmother baked cookies each morning for the staff to share, filling the shop with a warm aroma of cinnamon and sugar for every visitor greeted by sweet warmth. Local newspapers ran stories about the young entrepreneur who transformed his dreams into a thriving enterprise, showing his picture beside photos of his crafts, and his story appeared on the front page of the Saturday edition. Javier felt happy knowing that his dream inspired community members of all ages and brought a spark of creativity and kindness to his town where everyone now saw art as a bridge between dreams and reality. He set aside part of his profits to start a scholarship fund, providing free art classes and supplies to children who could not afford lessons, and the fund grew as more people donated. Parents and teachers praised his scholarship, saying it gave children confidence and joy, and letters arrived telling stories of learners who discovered new talents. He organized free workshops in the old school library, setting up tables with paper, paints, and brushes, and taught eager students how to draw simple pictures that brightened dark days. The librarian, who once doubted him, thanked Javier for bringing life back into the dusty reading room, where art now filled the silent corners. Javier remembered how he felt mocked in that hallway years ago, and he stood before children with a proud smile, telling them anyone with imagination could succeed. Encouraged by his reputation, he added products like pencil toppers, hand-bound notebooks, and art kits to his catalog, each crafted with care, ensuring each product shone with quality. His sister managed the online store from home, replying to messages, packaging orders neatly, and sending them with a hand-drawn thank you note in each package. The second year rolled on. Javier opened a small workshop behind the original shop to print cards and bookmarks in larger batches with a new press whose steady hum inspired new ideas. He hired local artists and apprentices to work with him, teaching them the patterns and lettering that made his brand special, and together they created new designs each week. The team gathered at dawn to share ideas over tea and bread, sketching shapes like stars, animals, and seasonal symbols that kept their products fresh. By the end of the second year, Javier's savings book held more than 1 million coins, a milestone he had dreamed of but never believed he could reach, marking a milestone he would always remember. He held a celebration in the workshop yard, stringing lights above tables of cookies and tea, where family, friends, and former classmates joined under the sunset. He He thanked his grandmother for her support, his sister for her work, and his friends for their dedication, knowing each had played a part in his success, and he felt his heart overflow with gratitude. In his speech, he spoke about kindness, saying a small idea can grow big when you treat people with respect and share your dreams. That night, he counted his coins before closing his savings book, noting the exact figure and feeling a gentle flutter of triumph and humility in his chest. He thought of the old school building where students had laughed at his patched coat, and he remembered the pang of shame he had felt each morning. Now he held the power to change that story, and he felt a quiet strength in knowing he could use his wealth to help others who struggled. He opened his notebook and sketched a plan to buy the very school where he learned his lessons, drawing the building with his name over the door, and he sketched tall flags waving above it. Javier imagined walking through the school halls as owner, offering free books and art supplies to every student who passed through the gates. He promised himself he would use his status to give back, turning cruelty into compassion and showing that anyone can rise above mockery through work and heart, and he believed in the power of kindness. As he closed the notebook, he felt a warm glow in his chest, knowing the next chapter would be about sharing hope with children who once teased him. He kissed his grandmother on the forehead and whispered that soon they would visit the school not as students, but as its proud owners ready to open doors wide for every child. With a peaceful heart and eyes full of dreams, Javier drifted off to sleep. Excited for the day, he would step into the school courtyard as a millionaire who turned mockery into triumph. The sun rose on the day. Javier formally took ownership of the old school building, and he stepped through the grand wooden doors with a mixture of pride and humility filling his chest. He carried the large ceremonial key, its red ribbon fluttering in the morning breeze, up the stone steps while dozens of students gathered to watch the boy they once mocked return as their new benefactor. Javier's grandmother followed closely behind, her shawl draped elegantly over her shoulders, her gentle smile radiating pride at her grandson's transformation from poverty to prosperity. As he unlocked the heavy door, Javier felt the weight of the past lift from his shoulders, imagining how the laughter and mockery would soon be replaced by creativity and kindness in every corridor. Inside the courtyard, he paused to look up at the faded facade, recalling the cold mornings when he had shuffled through these gates in patched clothes and hollow stomach. Now the walls stood ready to be painted with bright murals of suns, rainbows, and open books, each symbol promising hope and new beginnings for every child who entered. He walked through the silent halls once filled with whispers of cruelty and saw his reflection in the dusty window panes, reminding himself how far he had come. Volunteers, including former classmates who had teased him, arrived early carrying paint buckets, brushes, and cheerful hearts ready to transform each gray corner of the school. Together they set up scaffolding and began painting stories of bravery, compassion, and learning on once dull walls, turning each corridor into a gallery of inspiration. Javier personally painted a massive golden sun above the main entrance with rays stretching outward, determined that no child would ever feel left in darkness again. He invited Miss Thompson to oversee the creation of a new library stocked with thousands of books, journals, and art supplies for students of all ages and backgrounds. Under her guidance, they arranged shelves to form cozy reading nooks, each corner designed to welcome curiosity and spark imagination in young minds. In the old science lab, he installed microscopes, telescopes, and test tube kits donated by local businesses impressed by his vision and generosity. Javier hired a team of dedicated educators and artists to lead workshops in writing, painting, and mathematics, ensuring every student could explore hidden talents. The yard echoed with laughter as children of all backgrounds joined in planting a flower garden, each seed acting as a promise of growth and unity in their community. Parents watched with tears in their eyes as their children discovered spaces to create, learn, and dream, a sight they had never imagined in these familiar halls. The mayor officially proclaimed the building reopened as the Javier Morales Learning Center, celebrating a transformation rooted in perseverance and empathy. Journalists snapped photographs of Javier standing before his mural and asked how a boy with so little could inspire an entire town to believe in second chances. He humbly credited his grandmother, his teachers, and every small act of kindness along the way for the success that now filled each bright corner. On the main stage, he delivered a speech about turning mockery into motivation, reminding listeners that every challenge provides an opportunity to rise. He announced free after-school programs in entrepreneurship, art, and literature, ensuring no child would feel bound by circumstances beyond their control. A scholarship fund named in honor of his grandmother was launched, promising to cover school supplies and workshop fees for underprivileged learners. He unveiled polished plaques bearing the names of donors and volunteers, each plate shining as a token of gratitude for those who believed in his dream. The courtyard became a bustling hub of activity as students tested new art kits, performed skits, and shared stories of how the building's rebirth gave him hope. Javier watched as children from different neighborhoods formed clubs, organized charity drives, and planned events celebrating their unique talents. Every corner of the learning center buzzed with energy as art, science, and literature blended into a tapestry of communal growth and joy. His former bullies approached him cautiously, offering apologies and congratulations, and Javier welcomed them with warm hands and open ears. He invited them to co-host anti-bullying workshops, using his story to guide discussions on empathy, respect, and understanding. Teachers reported a remarkable shift in atmosphere, noting that students felt more connected, motivated, and valued than ever before. Javier's grandmother watched from a bench beneath a blossoming tree, her eyes shining with tears of joy as the community embraced her grandson's gift. That evening, a celebration lit the courtyard with lanterns and soft music, where families gathered to share food, laughter, and aspirations for the future. Javier cut a large cake decorated with the school logo and shared slices with every child, reminding them that sweet moments are best enjoyed together. As dusk settled, he led a lantern walk through the courtyard, each flame symbolizing the light of knowledge chasing away the darkness of despair. Under the starry sky, he promised to continue improving the center, adding workshops, inviting guest speakers, and fostering an environment of lifelong learning. Children drifted home clutching art supplies and books, their imaginations ignited by new ideas and a sense of belonging they had never felt before. Javier returned to the quiet night with his grandmother, feeling the gentle weight of responsibility and the buoyant spark of purpose guiding his every step. He unlocked their small home above the bakery and gazed at the key in his hand, remembering that humble beginnings often lead to incredible journeys. As he lay in bed, he wrote in his journal, "Today I bought my school and gave it back to the children," knowing these words carry the power to inspire. His grandmother kissed his forehead softly and whispered that she had believed in him from the very first day she held him in her arms. Javier closed his eyes with a grateful heart, dreaming of the countless stories, discoveries, and triumphs that would fill the halls of the Learning Center for generations to come.